Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some pro-revenge stories and our first story of the day is by AE2AW, Hippity Hoppity, this is no longer your property. To manage. After graduating college, my girlfriend and I moved to a new state where she was accepted into an engineering program. We found a lovely garden apartment style complex that advertised 100 megabytes per second internet speed included in the price among a few other amenities. When we met the property manager, he seemed strict but well-mannered, nothing out of the ordinary. Until we signed the lease. The first problem. Suddenly, walking into his office was not allowed without an appointment. I had to come by to ask a question, saw him browsing social media, and figured he was as available as he made himself to us when we first came by, unannounced, to view a model apartment. Nope. He refused to answer my question and asked me to make an appointment via email. The second problem. The terms of our lease included an attachment to complete within 48 hours of accepting the keys that details all discrepancies within the unit. We submitted the attachment via email around the 40th hour. The property manager responded that the terms recently changed from 48 to 24 hours, and since we had passed 24 hours, we would be held liable for all found damages. When citing our copy of the lease, which explicitly stated 48 hours, he informs us that we signed an outdated copy and would need to make an appointment to come by the office and sign a new lease. The third problem. The internet speed was not 100 megabytes per second as advertised. It was less than 15 megabytes off peak and about 5 megabytes per second on peak. We again contacted the property manager to complain, but were referred to make an appointment. The fourth problem. We made an appointment to address the previous three problems. During this meeting, and after I finished voicing our issues, the property manager leans forward and says, "There are other communities in this neighborhood that may be more accepting of people like you and your girlfriend. You're welcome to break the lease and leave." People like you and your girlfriend. I had thought he was referencing our no-nonsense response to his nonsense. Daily communication, scheduling multiple meetings to address these issues, etc. But my girlfriend believed he was speaking towards our skin colors. Her, a black woman, and myself, a white man. My girlfriend jokingly told me to check my privilege before getting serious and explaining to me that we were experiencing discrimination at the very least. The solution. I did some research and discovered the property manager worked for a larger organization that owned several complexes throughout the country. I found their director of human resources on LinkedIn and made a connection. I then emailed her copies of all email correspondence, screenshots of the lease, pictures of the internet speed flags advertised by the road, and more screenshots of online speed tests. We further noted his comment and the implications behind it. The human resources director replied within a few hours and promised us she would look into the issue. About 2 days later, the property manager called and asked us to come by his office at our convenience. We showed up near the end of the day and sat down across from him. He then proceeded to ask us if we would be willing to write a letter stating we accepted his apology, despite not yet offering said apology, and in return he would credit us a month's rent, accept our damages attachment, and promise to have the ISP on site within a week to assess the internet issues. We declined. He got personal with us and revealed his job may be at stake and asked us to reconsider. My girlfriend leaned forward and said, "There are other communities in this neighborhood that may be more accepting of people like you. You're welcome to leave." The property manager was replaced in a week with a super sweet older woman who not only gave us all the things the original property manager had promised, the 1-month credit, accepting the damages attachment, and then further scheduling maintenance to fix said damages, having the ISP assess and upgrade the internet to promised speeds, but she also made it clear her office was always open for anything we may need. I looked up the old property manager about a few months later on LinkedIn, still unemployed. So let me ask you guys something here. If tenants like this complain to the higher-up HR for the company that this property manager was actually being discriminatory against them, do you think if those claims could be verified, the HR should have just let this guy go to begin with rather than trying to allow him to even put an apology out? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by FweakinLittle. Give my hours to a new hire? I'll leave you with a store to close yourself, misfiled paperwork, and get you fired. This happened a couple months ago at an old employer. I worked at a supermarket in my state throughout high school and while in college in the United States, making $9 to start and only $10.50 at the end. The store had one store manager, two assistant store managers, one manager and assistant manager per department, which there were 9 departments. For 5 years, I worked every position there because who knew what hiring was, right? Understaffing was a regular here, so if a department needed closing and I worked, I had to close it. From stocking to register to manager's duties, everything was game. My biggest acknowledgements were being a bookkeeper, out terms of the person who keeps track of all the money, monitor, glorified cashier, basically wrangle the regular cashiers and divvy up cash drawers to each register, service desk, cigarettes, lottery, customers BS, and store opener and closer. There were 5 people who knew bookkeeping, 2 other people besides me, and the 2 managers who ran the front end of the store. There were about 5 monitors who all needed to be trained on service desk as well. Every monitor and bookkeeper needed to know how to open the store and close it. For being a supermarket in a town with about 20,000 people, we were severely understaffed. I worked 12 to 16-hour shifts at least once a week because people would call off all the time. Keep all this in mind for later on. Backstory: I started working here at 16 in high school, originally as a stock person. 25-hour weeks, eventually moved up to 35-plus-hour weeks. Moved up to register, then monitor, then service desk, and finally bookkeeping when I turned 18, now 21. The hours were always good, never had a week drop below 35 hours at least. But it all changed because of some Richard head. At the start of COVID-19, I was working while in college, so all these guidelines had to be followed. Everyone needed their toilet paper and hand sanitizer to keep COVID away. No biggie. On top of the guidelines, we also had been hiring a copious amount of people. This store had a history of training new hires with other people who have been working for maybe a month or so. So as you could guess, training was a disaster. But since COVID-19 had the store busy all the time, we needed more people. I wanted to train the people right away because I got sick of doing other people's jobs. In March, we had gotten 4 new hires to train for my position. Now these new hires needed training on the service desk. Easy, let them run it while I watched and helped out the best I could. Easiest way to get people to learn. Most of them needed training on here because there were 3 of us total at the time who could run it. After training everyone, 1 per shift at a time over 4 weeks, there were now 7 people now ready to freak up the world. But everyone who knew how to run the service desk needed training on monitor too. Guess who had to train everyone for another position? After another 4 weeks of BS, everyone got trained. Around this time was the end of May. This is where the juice begins. The juice. Starting in June, we had been starting to lay off the hours since COVID-19 started to slow down. Hours started to get cut from all the register people, from about 20 to 30 hours a week to 10 hours max. We got overstaffed and people started quitting left and right. Not a big deal because those positions were easy to fill. But that's when my hours started getting cut. At the time, the one new hire who started in March, who we'll call Helen, had been getting really good hours. I'm talking about my hours. We had the same problem, college money, car money, the works and all. But then I got scheduled for 16 hours one week and they got scheduled for over 35 hours. So I decided to confront the assistant manager who was in charge of scheduling. We'll call him Frank. I said, "Hey Frank, I noticed my hours got cut. What's happening?" "I know, everyone's hours are getting cut. I have to make room for everyone, you know." I couldn't help but notice that Helen is getting quite the amount of hours, so you made room for her and no one else? "I was unaware of that. I'll get you some more hours next week." The reset of the week was kind of boring since I was a workaholic. No one called me to cover shifts or anything. The following week, I asked around to see who covered any shifts last week, and it turns out that all the new hires got called first. That kind of pissed me off, but hey, can't do anything about it now. Later that day, I checked my schedule and what do you know, the same 16-hour week. I was livid at this point. I should have been honored for my seniority there, not getting freaked over in hours. I went back to Frank and confronted him. I said, "Hey, what the heck is this? I thought you'd be finding me hours this week. I can't live off of this." "Well, it turns out that I couldn't find you hours. I tried calling." "BS, you tried calling me. Not a single person called me. Instead, all the new hires got called. What the heck, man?" "There's nothing I can do. You might just have to find another job." This pissed me off beyond belief. I was ready to pop, but this is when my bright idea came into play. For a couple days, I searched around for other supermarkets in my area offering jobs. After about a day of searching, I found a job paying double what I made now for the same qualifications. I gave them a ring and got an interview for the following week. The following day, I went into work for what I didn't know was my last shift and told Frank what was happening. "Hey Frank, I just wanted to let you know I took your advice." "Advice? Do you mean finding another job?" "You're freaking right. I hope you have fun." I will never forget the look on his face. Completely baffled. He didn't expect me to actually find another job so quickly. This is where my revenge began. Revenge. After I walked out of Richard Head Frank's office, I went around doing my usual work. During every shift, a metric freak ton of paperwork needed to be processed in the computer in order to close the store correctly and set up bookkeeping for the next day. Fun fact, that day in particular was Snap Day. For those who don't know what that is, it's the day that government-funded food stamps arrive on everyone's EBT card monthly. That day, I decided to say, freak paperwork and just don't do crap. I was quitting that day because my anger got the better of me. The store closes at about 12 a.m., and I walked out of that crap hole as free as can be. The next day, I woke up to find some really obnoxious and angry texts from coworkers. I completely disregarded them, unknowingly that they said I worked that morning. I went down to the supermarket to grab some things from my house, and as soon as I walked in the door, every ex-coworker of mine looked at me as if I had just passed on the floor. One of them pulled me aside, let's call them George, and this happened. "What the freak, bro? I had to cover your shift this morning and you have the balls to walk in here after that?" I said, "I don't work here anymore. Freak off." I continued to get my groceries and talked to one of my closer ex-coworkers there about what had happened. As it turned out, Frank had no idea that the previous day was my last and that the entire front end of the store had gotten brutally freaked over. Since the store closed at 12 a.m. and no paperwork was filed, our corporate called the assistant manager, also in charge of making sure all departments are closed correctly, and asked where all the paperwork was. No idea that I had not filed it, Frank had to go into the store, over an hour away from him, to file all the paperwork himself. Not only that, tons of violations were given to him because since none of the paperwork got done by the person closing, no one had a record of anything done at the store from the previous day. On top of everything, the amount of paperwork needed done was practically doubled since that day was Snap. As soon as the store manager heard about this, she was livid. After about a month, I was working my new job and heard some information about Frank. Apparently, he had to go into a meeting with our corporate bosses and the store manager. He had gotten fired from his position due to all of this and had not been able to get a letter of recommendation from that employer also. Sucks to suck, huh? It just goes to show that if you're in a position of management and you choose favoritism over seniority and qualifications, it can really come back to bite you when those people give up on you. And our final story of the day is by amberkatiemay. "Steal my medication, I make you seriously regret it." So when I was 15, I was diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenia. Now, despite what TV shows and movies portray, not all schizophrenia are serial killers. If you can keep your medication in balance, you can live a perfect normal life. From the age of 15 to 20 was rather hard as we tried to form the right balance in medication for me. But it's been 11 years since I was first diagnosed and has been 6 years since I had any really bad symptoms. There had been a few minor issues when my meds would go out of balance, but nothing too extreme. Anyways, this happened 3 years ago. I had just moved into a new apartment with 2 new roommates. We'll call them Zach and Rachel. Yes, those are their real names, cause freak them. Anyways, due to my illness, I take multiple medications. an antipsychotic, antidepressants, and an anti-anxiety medication to name a few. These are all rather strong medications. So when I moved in and got settled, I started noticing some of my meds start going missing. I have my pills counted out and ready so I know exactly how many I have. I immediately suspect my roommates as they were the only ones with access to my room. I also knew for a fact they took other medications to get high and they were pretty open about it. But I had no proof and didn't want to risk pissing them off as I had to live with them. So I looked past it hoping it was a one-time thing. But it wasn't. After a few days of this, I lost it and confronted them. They denied it, and of course, I had no proof. I even got a lock for my room, but somehow they still managed to get in. So here's where the revenge starts. So due to all my medication, I get constipated a lot. So I have a very strong laxative I take when this happens. They are tiny pinkish pills. If you don't know about medication, you could easily mistake these for something else. One morning before heading to work, I took my antipsychotic pill bottles and switched out the pills for my laxatives. And then I left. When I came home that evening, both my roommates were in the washrooms. I asked Rachel what was wrong. She made up some BS food poisoning excuse. They spent the whole night in and out of the bathrooms. My medication stopped disappearing after that night. I know it might not be realistic considering the situation, but if I realized that they were stealing my pills, I don't even know if I would want to confront them. I would just want to start trying to get out of there if at all possible. Although considering the laxative strategy did work, I would have kept leaving those laxatives out anywhere and just completely locked up the other pills wherever possible. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So which of these stories was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and turn notifications on if you haven't so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Any little thing that you do helps the channel grow so much more. Whether it's commenting, subscribing, or just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here on the Storytime channel.